Gonna let the sun shine.
Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel for another video. Today I am sitting down to do a Q&A with you guys, but not just any Q&A, a homeschool specific Q&A, and I want to thank Haya for sponsoring today's Q&A. Alright, so jumping into these homeschool questions, these all came from Instagram and I took screenshots of them, so I have a few to get through, but they are all going to be only homeschool related questions. Now, I decided that I needed to do one of these because I was starting to receive a lot of the same question, and anytime I start to see that, I start to think, okay, maybe I should do a Q&A. So hopefully you guys find this Q&A helpful. The first question is, children in K and 4th grade, would you do separate science units using the good and the beautiful? No, I would do one science unit specific with the 4th grader, and I would just let the kindergartner watch and observe as much as they were wanting to. The Good and the Beautiful actually has a very simple course that's predominantly reading, the Little Hearts and Hands. You might do that one time a week as something specific for them, but I would not do two separate units. Kindergarten is a little young to be doing like a specific science unit focus, and so that's what that Little Hearts and Hands science is really for, and it's more of just reading and observing science in their world around them, which is a great starting point for kindergarten. So that's what I would do. What character trait cards did I use? I think you're referring to something a long time ago. They were from September & Co. and they have recently shut down their shop, so they're no longer available. Back to school and back to homeschooling, all the activities brings me to today's video sponsor, which is Haya. If you guys have never tried Haya before, they are an incredible children's multivitamin for kids ages 2 and older. And the really great thing about Haya is that they are free of the top 9 allergens, as well as all of the gross stuff you don't want in your children's multivitamins, like filler, gummy, junk, additives, and even added sugar. They also are not made with any artificial dyes or anything like that, so your kids are only getting the good stuff. Back to school, back to homeschool, back to activities. I want my kids to be as healthy as possible, and I know you guys do too. So if you want to check out Haya, I have a 50% off link down below that you guys can take advantage of on your first order from Haya. That you're gonna head to hayahealth.com/graceandgrit to take advantage of that, or click the link in my description box so that you can make sure your kids are getting all of those micronutrients that they may or may not be eating, and getting what they need so that they can get back into their activities, get back into the swing of things with school, learning all of the above. Making sure that they're properly nourished is so important, and Haya can help with that. So the link to Haya will be down below for you guys. I know your kids will love them. The next question, how did the transition from the Good and the Beautiful to other higher level courses, i.e. high school math, go? So this is one of those ones that I keep seeing pop up, and I don't expect everyone who comes to follow along on my homeschooling journey to know all of the history and to take the time to go and look for it all. But all of this is documented on my channel. So with my older kids, the Good and the Beautiful math was not around. My youngest daughter, who is currently right now going into the 8th grade, is the only one who has been able to use the Good and the Beautiful math because it was not available at my kids' appropriate levels at the time that they needed them. So my older 3 kids, the ones who are going into 10th grade, 12th grade, and just recently graduated, did not use the Good and the Beautiful math at all because it wasn't available. My youngest daughter is the only one. So because she is the only one, she has not moved on to high school math yet. So I can't really answer this question, although I'm expecting it to go perfectly smooth. High school classes in college, I feel overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. Well, I would say start with watching my homeschooling through high school playlist. Start with just researching your state's graduation requirements, and I am launching a brand new product that will help you plan out your kids' entire high schooling, homeschooling through high school journey. It may be available. I don't know when this video is going to post. If it is, I'll link to it down below. You will be blown away at how simple it can be, and I have outlined it perfectly in my new book for you guys. Do I think homeschooling high school years without a co-op is lonely or freeing? Probably a little bit of both, honestly. We had that choice made for us because we don't have co-ops where we live. And I think my kids may have enjoyed that experience to some extent, maybe once a week or something like that. But it's also very freeing to homeschool completely on your own. So I think it's a little bit of both. And I think you just have to look at where the Lord has you and understand that He has called you to homeschool regardless of circumstance. He didn't say, I'm calling you to homeschool in the perfect homeschooling community with all of the perfect resources all around you to create a heaven on earth homeschooling experience for your kids. No, it's a call to homeschool because it's a call to discipleship, and the rest of it is really just bonus. So I think it's a little bit of both. Second grade boy curriculum and schedule for a typical day with subjects and times. Well, I am not a timed schedule person, and so I probably would let go of that pretty quickly, especially for second grade. That's very young. My recommendation would be to start your day in God's Word and start helping him build a strong foundation with the Lord, and then focus on the main things, which are reading, writing, and math. And then anything extra, get out in nature, have play dates, go to the park, go on hikes, do some art, just anything fun like that. But second grade should be pretty simple. My kids are behind in some areas. Would online thinking of BJU Press help elementary level? Well, I'm wondering why you think your kids are behind, because who are they behind? But let them run their own race and achieve things, at their time while being gently pressed forward. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm a firm believer in meeting kids where they are and kind of letting grade level stuff fall to the wayside, of course, within reason. If we're talking about a 12-year-old who still can't read, then, there is a call for some type of intervention there. But in general, I think as moms, we kind of worry about this a little bit too much. I really would not say that a BJU course is going to help them catch up. I think what you need to do is look at where they are and then meet them where they are. And if that requires them working faster because not everything is a challenge to them, then perhaps they can move through something more quickly. But I don't think throwing them into an online video option is going to, fill in those gaps or holes that you might be talking about. This same person is asking thoughts on, let's see. Where'd that other question go? I can't see it now. I think you were asking about thoughts on math curriculum for upper elementary. I personally would not do that, but that's just me. We tried that with my older two kids, and it ended up being quite the disaster that I had to really put in the work, and my kids had to put in the work to get beyond. So I would not do that. So let's see. Next question. One of my kids really wants to go to public school. It's a firm no. How can I convince her homeschool is best? I just would not. You are the parent. You have the authority. God gave you the authority, and you sound like you have a firm no. So it's not really up to you to convince her. And honestly, sometimes we cannot convince our kids of what is true and what is right because they're kids. And so maturity later in life comes along, and they recognize, wow, my parents really did have my best interest at heart, or wow, I'm really glad that I didn't have to experience those things, stuff like that. But right now, if she isn't seeing that homeschooling is best, then I say let her keep her opinion. Try not to take it personal and keep on moving forward, because we don't need to parent in a way in which our kids agree with. right? They're not going to always agree. There's things that my own kids right now would say that they don't agree with about my parenting. But when you look at those situations with my own children, there's usually there's some laziness, there's some selfishness, there's some different things that need to be worked out. And so I don't think we homeschool in order to convince our kids. I mean, you might point out things to her like, wow, look at the freedom you have, or wow, look, you don't have to have that stress that that friend of yours has in their life, but I don't think we really need to worry about convincing them that it's best. The next one, how did you divide up the Good and the Beautiful workbooks for your kids every 2 weeks? I don't understand that question. I'm sorry. If you want to leave clarification down below, I'll try to get back to you. What is my favorite subject to teach? My favorite subject to teach is the Word of God, apologetics, just faith-filled conversations, and learning those things alongside my kids is my favorite thing to do with them. Tips on how to lead your kids in faith when you are just now learning yourself. Well, I love this question because the Lord always meets us where we are. And so He is faithful to provide what you need and what your kids need. So you just keep seeking God and keep having them follow your lead. You don't have to have all of the answers. There's so many resources out there when it comes to actual questions, scientific questions, questions about age of the earth, evolution, those kind of things. I'll link to my favorite resources down below that can be helpful. But honestly, my best advice on tips is to be honest with your kids to an age appropriate level. Speak about the things that God is doing in your life and the things that He's showing you, and just build that authentic relationship. Forgiveness, sharing things, obviously age appropriately, of how you've been redeemed, things God has changed in your life. And then you just keep seeking God and praying and asking, because He's faithful to complete the work that He began in your life and in your kids' lives. What age do you recommend starting the Good and the Beautiful typing? I think that's a fun thing to add in around the 3rd grade. Do I take the day off for birthdays? No, we do not take the day off for birthdays like consistently. Have we taken a day off for somebody's birthday? Yes. Is it something that I do every year? No. Favorite homeschool traditions? I would say one of them is like our end of the year celebration that I always do. I put a lot of time and thought into that, and I've still continued to do that even as my kids have grown older. Another favorite tradition of mine is our homeschool yearbook that I make at the end of the year. I love having those to just remember, because we forget all of the things. Another tradition I love is obviously like taking their pictures on the first day of school for back to school. And the rest of our homeschool is really just, it ebbs and it flows, and there's things we've done multiple years and then not done. And so we've had different traditions that have kind of faded away, and different things come in and come out, but those are some of my favorite ones. Cell phones during school, are they allowed or are they put up until after school? 1000% after school. Put away. It's not even in the same room. So yeah, that's really important. What is your favorite art project that each of your kids have done? Probably all of them have been on their own time, not during homeschool hours. So, my kids they all love being artistic in some way, right? So some of my kids are really amazing sketchers. Some of them are amazing painters. Some of them are just love being creative and doing different things. And so I just love that they all have something that they enjoy as a creative outlet. As far as like art projects that I've received that have been meaningful, my oldest daughter painted me a beautiful like Christmas wreath and candle painting for my birthday a few years ago, but I'll have it forever and always display that, so I love that. My son, my oldest son, painted me a Christmas cardinal one year that I absolutely love and treasure, that I have in a frame, and I put it up every Christmas. You've probably seen it on my wall in videos past. I have my son sketched me a basset hound several years ago, so he's very critical of it, but I love it because it's so good. And I think he did it when he was around 10 or 11. So those are some of my favorite ones that come to mind, but none of those were during school hours. Opinions on the Tuttle twins for history. I love it for younger kids. I have a 5th grader who struggles with reading. Any tips or tricks? Take the pressure off and just let them read books they enjoy at the level they enjoy, and make sure that they're continually reading. And kind of by 5th grade, you should probably be able to kind of isolate why they're challenged. And then you might want to consider, getting a little bit of assistance in that area, whether it's you or somebody else. How to decide if you should take the risk and try a different curriculum. Honestly, the only time I've ever tried another curriculum has been when something just simply has not been working. So I think when something hasn't been working and it hasn't been working, it doesn't really feel risky to try something new. I've never just changed something for the sake of changing it, because I don't believe the grass is always greener. And I think that continuity and consistency in homeschooling is really important. Nobody believes me when I say that parents can issue a diploma to a senior advice. It's illegal to not be able to, because we live in the United States of America and homeschooling is legal in all 50 states. So maybe just direct them to the HSLDA website. Let's see. Do I have a rough schedule that I can share of school days with all 3 at home? A rough schedule? No. I have a consistent start time, and we just do one thing after the next in the same order. So I've called those flows and rhythms, and that's been something I've always done since I homeschooled, even when my kids were really little. I will share my kids' flows for this school year soon, but it's not a schedule per se. It's just kind of the way that I'm going to order their days, and there's always a reason why I order it the way in which I do. But yeah, I can share those in a future video. What are my top 3 books every teenager should read? Oh man, that is a hard one to pick just 3, but I have my homeschool book recommendations linked down below, so you could probably go through there and choose 3 really fantastic reads. Are we talking about a young teenager or an older teenager? Because that will also vary. If you want to leave some clarification down below. I think that every kid should read some classic literature. I'll just leave it at that. Like The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, C.S. Lewis. I think there's some really incredible thought-provoking reads by George Orwell that older kids should read. So yeah, those are some of the ones that come to mind for me. What math curriculums have I tried for online and enjoy? Grade 6 plus, Not the Good and the Beautiful, only Shorman Math. That's the only one I would recommend. What's the longest break I've ever taken? Summer, illness, etc. Summer break has definitely been the longest, and it's been this year. So we finished up our school year on June the 6th, and we're starting September the 8th. So that's a solid 3 months off, and that's been the longest. How do I decide which high school credits to start in 8th grade and which ones to wait on? I start things in 8th grade if my kids seem ready for the next step, and so it's varied. But ultimately, if I have an 8th grade child who is ready for Algebra 1, I'm going to give them high school credit because that is a high school level course. So it's really just kind of specific to each child, and so that's the way that I have done it. What are my thoughts on classical conversations? That it's not for me. For 6th graders, do you checklist or use a planner? My boys are having a hard time with checking things off. No, I've never used a checklist or a planner for any of my kids. What I've done is a flow, so they know that they have to complete one lesson of everything in that order, and that has served us well for all of these years. Do I take my children's feelings about a curriculum into account or just use what I feel is best? Definitely both. If my kids have something to say about a curriculum, I will hear them out. But if they're just complaining because they think it's boring or it's too hard or there's too much of this and not enough of that, then I kind of use my wisdom and discernment to just say, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. I've paid for this, we're gonna finish it. Or, sometimes we have to do things we don't wanna do, those. Hardest grade, I would say, it's not really grade, it's more of like, that's going to be specific to each person and each family. But what I will say is the preteen years are kind of tough for a little bit, with just all the changes going on in everybody's lives. So there was a period of challenge there with some of my kids, not all, but some. And then I would say, upper teenage years for boys seems to be a little bit more challenging. So yeah, that, I don't know if it's a grade or more of an age and a life stage, but that's just been my experience. Curious if you've tried or looked into any of Shorman's sciences and my thoughts. I have not looked into any of Shorman's sciences simply because I already have science that I love and I've used so many times over, but I have heard really great things about it, and I know that it is very affordable, so I think it's a great option. It's just not something that I have ever needed to use. Have I ever considered joining a charter school? No. Where we live, you can't join a charter and still homeschool. So if I joined a charter, my kids would go to a charter school. So that's an absolute no for me. The planner that I use Wendy's from Plan Prep Pray, but she is sold out. Am I going to use the Good and the Beautiful new biology curriculum next year? I am going to use it. I don't know if I'll use it next year or not. A Bible study for my 3rd and K. It's our first year homeschooling. I'll link to my favorite biblical resources down below. But I have a few books on my Amazon list that I would also recommend, like the Ology and the Answers books for kids, our 24 Family Way. Questions on how to handle high school boys going on YouTube and other sites during school time. My suggestion would be to sit up there and watch them, and let them know that what they are doing is disobedient, it's dishonest, you've asked them not to, and then you have to have consequences and let it be firm. It seems sometimes that we think that our kids are going to just stay focused and diligent because they're old enough to do it. And then we usually find out the harder way that they haven't been doing that. So sometimes you just have to kind of rein it in, and it feels silly sometimes to have to do that with such older kids, but your presence being up there and just not letting them get away with things like that is probably what needs to be done. And then of course address the heart issue about why they're doing that, right? Like if you've asked them not to, then it's just disobedience. Let's see. How to put Shorman math credit on high school transcripts with the integrated geometry. So you can do it 2 ways. You can put it as a half credit for the 2 years. So if your child takes Algebra 1 with geometry in the 9th grade, you can put 1 full Algebra 1 credit and a half credit for geometry for 9th grade. And then obviously do the same thing with Algebra 2 and the other half credit for, let's say, 10th grade, if you want to do it that way. Or you can just list them out individually for each grade level. It doesn't really matter the year in which they took it. So you could put Algebra 1 for 9th, Geometry for 10th, and Algebra 2 for 11th, because that is kind of like the traditional pathway. So you can do it that way as well. Do I ease my way into school the first week or go all in on all subjects? We go all in. When I pulled my son from school 3 years ago, he tested 2 years behind and I can't seem to catch him up. How would I go about helping a child who is behind? I would just let go of all of those labels, because you're still holding him to a standard that was in a system that was failing him. So bringing him home means we're letting go of those things. Obviously, we want our children to grow and mature, but holding him to a standard of a system that you left isn't going to be beneficial. So what can you do? Just keep encouraging him, keep helping him, keep loving him, keep providing him materials to learn from, and keep encouraging him, because honestly, he probably has a little bit of discouragement or negative thoughts about himself, especially if he's heard you or his teachers saying he's behind or this or that. And a lot of those expectations can really destroy a child's love of learning. So we want to bring that back. So that is what I would recommend. How to lead your older children to a future career. What did I do to foster interest in future careers? I don't think you can really lead your kids to a future career, because ultimately it's their life and what God has willed for their life. But our job as moms and dads, quite honestly, is to recognize our children's giftings, recognize gifts that the Lord has given them, and then gifts and talents that they have developed. And then kind of throw some ideas out there, you know. And I also think that it's totally okay for an 18-year-old senior to graduate high school and not know what they want to do for a career. It's kind of ridiculous that we expect it, but I think that we can help guide, we can help mentor, we can encourage them to try things, we can speak to them about what we see in them, and what they're interested in. So it's really kind of a blend of all of those things. What are your kids interested in? What natural giftings and talents has God given them? What talents and giftings have they developed and you have witnessed as their parent? And how can they use all of those things to serve the Lord? So those are the conversations we're having. We are not like directing our children into a specific career path, because ultimately it's their life and it's God's plan for their lives. And so I think sometimes we can be a little too, restricted on what we're thinking about. And so I also think that it's wise to take some time to consider these things. If your child really doesn't know, I don't think that there's anything wrong with taking a year, but as you take a year, we're not turning into a lazy person who is doing nothing with their time. So if we're taking a year off to figure out what's the next step, then we are praying, we're being active in our church, we're going to school in some capacity, even just for general education, we're going on missions trips, like we're doing stuff, we're being proactive in life. We're not just laying around and watching, TikTok or something like that, hoping that we're going to figure out what to do next. So I think just conversations and then paying attention to those things that you see in your children is really helpful, and remembering that it's their life and not yours too, and it's God's will for them. And sometimes we might be in step with that, and sometimes the Lord might take them down a completely different path that we never saw coming. And I think just, encouraging our kids when they get closer to this point, they feel the pressure naturally. And so having like high extreme expectations on your kids, I think is pretty rough. But I think we should, be wise in our godly counsel as we help our young adults figure out what their right next steps are. So that's it for this homeschooling Q&A. I hope you guys got some of your questions answered. Don't forget to check out the link to Hiya Health down below, where you can save 50% off on your order. It's hiyahealth.com/graceandgrit to take advantage of that. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any more questions that this video sparked, leave them down below in a comment, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye.
I'll paint with colors and I'll sing until my lungs give out.